What's so special about Abraham? At the beginning of this week's Torah portion of Lech lecha, God says to Abraham, Lech lecha, go. Go from your homeland, leave your father's house, leave everything you know behind, and go to the land that I will show you. And in return, your descendants will be made as numerous as the stars in the sky and the sand on the beach. Everyone who you come into contact with will be blessed. There will be a special relationship between me, God, and your descendants. It's a really good deal. So what did Abraham do to deserve it? That's the question that the rabbis ask, because after all, our introduction to Abraham just says, go. In the Midrash, the stories that the rabbis tell in order to explain these gaps and fill in some of our knowledge, Rabbi Yitzchak says that it can be compared to a man who's traveling from place to place, and he reaches this beautiful castle, and he sees it aglow. He said, is it possible that such a castle lacks a person to look after it? At which point the owner of the castle comes and says, I am the owner of this castle. This is like Abraham, who looks at the universe and says, is it possible that the universe could exist like this and there's no one to look after it? At which point God comes in and says, I am the master of the universe. And you, Abraham, Lech lecha, go. So what is it exactly that Abraham does in this story to merit such a wonderful brit, such a wonderful covenant and relationship with God? So he comes upon this building, the world, and he sees it. The word that I read in my translation says aglow, but the Hebrew word is doleket. It could mean aglow. It could mean that Abraham sees this beautiful building that is shining with light. He sees the world and he says, wow, he's amazed. And God says, I'm the one who made this, and you, Abraham, who have an appreciation for it, you will be my partner and your descendants will be my people. However, that word doleket doesn't just necessarily mean a glow. It could mean a blaze. It could be that Abraham looks at the world, right? The man walks and sees this building on fire and says, isn't there anyone who's in charge of this building? It's on fire. No one's putting it out. And then the owner says, I'm in charge here. So Abraham looks at the world and he sees that it's in trouble. He sees that there is moral corruption, that there are pieces of the world that are not good. And he says, the world is on fire. Who's in charge here? And God steps up and says, I'm in charge here. And so what Abraham has done is that Abraham has seen the brokenness of the world, has seen its problems and spoken out, has called God's attention to it. And so Abraham, noticing what's wrong, is able to be God's partner in fixing it. The last piece, though, is that when the owner shows up in our story, it doesn't say where the owner is. I'll read it one more time. Is it possible that such a castle lacks a person in charge of it? The owner of the building looked at him and said to him, I am the master of this castle. So if he's just walking down the street, that's what we talked about before. He walks up and says, I'm in charge here. Thank you for calling my attention to this problem. But what if the owner of the building isn't outside the building? What if he's inside the building? What if when we look at the world and we see all of its problems, all of its hardships, all of the things that are wrong, broken, ablaze in the world, and we ask, where is God? God is in the burning building. God needs help. And so what is it that Abraham does? Abraham says, is there no one here who is in charge? Is there no one who can step up? And the person who's supposed to be in charge says, I'm in charge. And he's on the second floor of a burning building. And the only one left is Abraham. And so why does God choose Abraham? Because Abraham does what we teach every Jewish person should do. He looks around. He says, B'makom she'eno ish, tishtadel liot ish. In a place where there is no upright person, strive to be that upright person. He sees the burning world and he says, it is my responsibility to fix it. And so God blesses him and says, you're the person that I need. I need someone who's ready to stand up, move forward, and do the hard work of fixing my burning, broken world. As we go forth in Parshat Lech Lecha, as we go forth into Shabbat and beyond, Let us learn from and inherit the merits of Abraham, our forefather, and always see the beauty of the world, have an appreciation for it, know what it is to be part of existence, and love it, so that when we look around and say, look, there's got to be something going on here, God can say, yes, you've got the message. It's a beautiful thing, and I'm glad to share it with you. But let us also see the problems in the world. Let us see the brokenness. Let us see where our morality is failing. Let us see where action needs to be taken. And let us do as Jews must always do and speak out. Let us use our voices to call attention so that God, at the very least, and everyone else also can see what is wrong and say, thank you for bringing my attention to it. Let's get to work. And when the time comes and we see that work needs to be done, that someone must stand up and take responsibility for the world that is ablaze, that we know as Jewish people that it is always our responsibility, that we must always be the ones to douse the flames and to enjoy only the world that is aglow and not the one that is on fire. I hope that you have a Shabbat Shalom.